Caddo DA, Caddo Parish DA James Stewart is here. Judge, welcome back to Kiel. Thank you for taking time for us today.
Thank y'all for the invitation.
You originally, in the case of Heather and Kelly Joes, you said you were going to pursue the death penalty against Mr. Watkins. You have apparently changed your mind, or the circumstances of what we're dealing with now has changed your mind. Why?
Okay, so I want to correct something.
Please
really
do.
Quick. I read what you had online yesterday. There are two different families. Okay. Two separate families. It's not family. It's separate family.
Gotcha.
From the beginning, Kelly's family did not want us to seek the death penalty. Heather's family wanted us to seek the death penalty. They're in Los Angeles. Kelly's family did not want us to seek the death penalty. So whatever decision I made, one family was not going to be happy. They're in East Texas.
And they're against the death penalty.
Yeah, they didn't want us to seek the death penalty.
But you did see, pardon me, Judge.
Okay, so I'm going forward.
But you did say originally that you were going to seek the death penalty in the case.
Correct. And but life changes, circumstances changes.
What are those circumstances?
Well, we've lost almost a year worth of jury trials from the pandemic. Right now, we cannot try a case. It won't be until April that we can even try a felony theft from Walmart with a jury, okay? Across this country, across this state, DA's offices have been unable to get into court to try cases. We've been unable to get jurors in. So when you start talking about contemplating a lockdown jury, when you can't even get 6 people in there to try a jury, those are the circumstances that we have to consider that we've lost over the past year.
Pardon me, sir, but the president says yesterday everybody will be vaccinated by the end of May. Doesn't that change that outlook?
And the last president said that it was a hoax. There was no pandemic. Okay, I've
so
lost.
You don't believe this one either. You're playing it cautious.
Playing it cautious. I take it one day at a time. I deal with the circumstances that are in front of me. I have people out now. I have people from contact tracing that are not now. We've had to close the court because we couldn't have court because people had pandemics. So the pandemic is real to us, and the moratorium is very real. That's the Supreme Court said we have not tried a case in 2021. B, they said starting in April, it's a local option, so the judges at any time can stop us from trying cases. I'm simply saying that is an additional factor that we have to consider. This case occurred in 2018. This is 2021. You keep putting this off, you're in 2022. Time does not work for the DA's office. It doesn't work for the victim's family. We're lining up these cases. We're trying to get them so we can go forward.
Do you wish, and I know you'll be honest here, do you wish this had been handled a little differently with regard to Heather's family? They feel like they were not consulted, they were not informed, that they were just told unilaterally, here's what we're doing.
When this case first started, I met with both families separately because there's a little tension between the two families. I met with them separately, gave them all the factors to consider, gave them all the information, made it very clear to them I would consider whatever information they wanted to give me, but at the end, it's the DA's decision whether or not to seek the death penalty. I gave them the decision. As you hear, one family accepted this last change, one family has not. Yes, could we handle it differently? Probably so.
You wish you had?
Yeah, I wish, but the person who tried to give the information, I don't know if there's anything he could have said or we could have said that would have made that family receptive to the change. And it's not the first time that I've gone through this in terms of the death penalty. Everybody has a different opinion about the death penalty. Everybody has a different sense of what justice is. One family on this side thinks justice does not require a death penalty. Another side thinks it's death plus something else.
Do you support the death penalty, Judge Stewart?
The death penalty is still on the table in Caddo Parish under the correct circumstances, but what we're dealing with now has changed the whole fabric of what we're going forward with, and I'm dealing with the realities of today.
Judge, you had said COVID was, I guess, the major reason. It was the first one you mentioned, the reason for foregoing the death penalty in this case. COVID's been around for a year now. Was this a decision that evidently you made just recently, though? Why a year after COVID?
No, COVID, the pandemic has changed in its form, it's changed as to the information, it's changed, it's morphed. In January of this year, the Louisiana Supreme Court placed a moratorium again on jury trials, okay? So at that point, we had to go back and reevaluate every case that we had. As you know, one of the bad things about the pandemic is we've had a upswing of other homicides in Caddo Parish. So we have all these new cases coming in, and we have these other cases we cannot move at this point. So I consider all the factors. I consider the evidence. We're in court today on this particular case, having what we call a 401B hearing, still trying to go forward. He's still charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He still faces life without probation, parole, or suspension of sentence, which in Louisiana is almost like the death penalty. There hadn't been any executions in Louisiana for more than 20 years. And whether or not we ever get back to it, I have no idea. You have nobody. Nobody can answer that question because the federal courts have a moratorium on death penalties. So we have to consider each and every factor in deciding whether we're going to go forward.
You saw the document Mr. King sent out with the rap sheet for Mr. Watkins, and the community is kind of outraged that we have somebody like that with that kind of criminal past roaming our streets, roaming our malls. Who's dropping the ball, if anyone?
Our legislature determines the laws of this state. They also determine who gets out and when they get out, okay? That's all I can say to that. That's above my pay grade. I've never, even when I was on the bench, I've never said this person goes in this day and they will get out that day, because you cannot calculate that time on the local level.
How do you answer people when they say this man should not have been walking our streets? You would agree with that, correct?
Oh, I would agree that there are some people who we do not want to walk the streets, but I also will tell you that in some cases we do not lock people up for life. There's an article in the Advocate yesterday that said the majority of voters in Louisiana want criminal justice reform. They don't want people staying in jail forever. So how do you balance that toward what we're talking about today? The two sides of this coin. It's an ongoing battle. My job each and every day is to prosecute the cases in front of us, do the best job we can for victims, try to balance what victims want, and deal with the circumstances in front of them.
You said there was a couple of things. You said there were things you wished you had done different or could have been done different. Is one of those speaking to Mr. King in person yourself rather than a member of your staff calling and announcing the change?
I have spoken to, and let me go. When we start saying families, that gets to be really, really, you can start talking about one person, you can start talking about 10 people, all of them don't agree, okay? Bill Edwards, who made this conversation, is a very experienced prosecutor. He's been there 25 plus years. He's the prosecutor on the case. We have a victim assistance person also whose job is to communicate. So they communicated. Bill is very clear to me that some of the things that are being said in that letter is not necessarily contextually what he said, okay, and how he said it. So maybe if I had to talk to him, they still would not have changed their response to it. I don't think there's a whole lot we could have said, that because the bottom line was, at this point, we're going forward with this case and we're not seeking the death penalty. I think anything less than that, they were not going to be happy. But the other family, I will again say, did not want us to seek the death penalty, and to my understanding, that has not changed.
How soon do you hope to get this to trial? And can you say today that you would not plead this down to something lesser at this point?
I've learned in life to never say never. Okay. It is not our intent. It is our intent to try this case. We have a number of cases that we intend to try if circumstances allow us, and we have the witnesses and evidence to go forward. We're trying to set this case this year, along with some other cases, according to the fact that if the courts allow us to go back in April.
Gotcha. Judge James Stewart, Caddo District Attorney, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. It's good to be back.